All right, so basically, I had some other video that I don't know, I just lost it. Maybe I just didn't get some of it enough, which I thought I had. But this is the blue car. Basically, the engine came back from the machine shop. It had the crank replaced. I did a bunch of repairs on stuff, and I'll go over that more in the video. I just figured I'd do this little quick opening here. At least you get to see a couple SRT4s in the background. But the blue car, it's up and running. So here's that video now, and you know, everything turned out successful. It's on the road again. Enjoy. All right, so I had this battery on charge overnight. We got some new clamps on there. We got some new clamps on this hose. I didn't put the coolant in yet. We got some of this stuff installed the way that it needs to be. The fuel line. So being it was a new turbo. And that the bearings were replaced in the crank. I'm going to just crank this thing over a bunch of times. So I have the fuel relay is pulled, and hopefully this battery finally charged up enough where we can get a couple cranks out of this thing. So let's see what happens here. All right. So we got it cranked over a couple times. Just going to grab a flashlight, do a quick little look over, double check everything. I'm going to install my fuel relay, cycle through my fuel, double check that, make sure that there's no leaks there either. All right, let's see what happens. For a minute. I'm going to be shutting it off. I'm going to be adding coolant, and I got a couple other things I gotta patch together yet. And just button up. I gotta get all the vacuum lines installed, which I didn't really need them to run, which has a check engine light because I don't have the boot solenoid plugged in. I'm working on getting that stuff together. It was quite a mess of stuff that was on this car that was kind of not really done right. So I got to get that stuff taken care of. I'll get that together. Initially, I had a little cap here blocking this off, but it came off. See? So that's why we started up a little high. But everything so far, I mean, that was a really nice, good, quick fire up. And that's, you're seeing it the way it happened. So the battery charged up, that's good. I'm going to shut this thing off and work on getting everything else buttoned up. I'll show you some of it. Alright, well, it's up and running, okay? So, let's go over a couple things that we did to make this thing better. Alright, so let's check this out. Now, you know when this thing came to us, it was supposedly needing a timing belt. The motor's actually sitting down in the way it's supposed to. The timing belt was replaced, it was sent out, the crank was fixed, valve cover gasket, front and rear mains, new timing belt, new water pump, cleaned up the injector, cleaned out all the fuel injectors, put new bolts in for the fuel rail, tapped the bolts, threads bolts for that, put the right bolt in over here, installed a washer bottle and line. So now he has washer fluid that goes on the windshield, which is something you need for Pennsylvania state inspection. The horn is installed where it needs to be. We installed the lower white hose because that wasn't there. The AC unit's all plugged in. The belts are working the way they're supposed to. This was in the trunk. I cleaned all that stuff up. I put together a factory set of vacuum lines. So everything is hooked up there. We redid this end. We redid this end. I installed new ends on for the side markers so that they can be installed and working correctly. Okay, so both of them are there. We replaced the cold side pipe because that was damaged. It now has the correct gasket holding the temperature sensor in where it's supposed to be. All right, and we did pull the large turbo off, went back to the stock turbo. This one here, the manifold that was on the original motor that was in the car was in pretty good shape, and it did have a 3-inch O2, so that's a new gasket, new manifold gasket. Regapped the plugs. The wastegate that was on there, I don't know what size spring that was supposed to be, but I couldn't pull it apart, so let's just say it had a 90-pound spring in it, and it never stopped building, boost, or released. So we have a stock one on. They're supposed to be 8 PSI. So this thing is now on PCM control boost. I don't know if there's a tune in the computer or not, but it's there. Painted up all the bracketry for that stuff. It still needs an air cleaner. Sealed some other things. Man, it was just so many different things were done. This car still, right here, it still has a lot of things that need to be addressed, okay? But I mean, that's some stuff that's going to be discussed and figured out. So right now, this thing's going to need at least one new tire. The clock spring or the aftermarket steering wheel is giving it an issue with making the horn work. The fog light bulbs are bad. It needs wiper blades. The rear brake pads are pretty much shot. The battery hold down's missing, which I might be able to find one of them. Like I said, the side marker lights, the inner fender wells. The air cleaner is something that needs to be picked up. I don't have one of those. The radiator here should probably be replaced as it is glued together. I don't know if that's going to cause a potential leak. These coilovers are very rusty. I mean, you can kind of see here on the top. Just imagine. I don't know if you've seen in the video when this thing was up and the wheels were off, they were pretty rusty. When you turn this wheel back and forth, you can hear the spring bouncing and binding, and it does sit extremely low. I'm sure it's not going to be fun to drive. One thing I can say with the, I mean, I don't know, I call these a cheaper mount because I always go with the Torque Solution, but with the SDK engine mount set and no balance chain shaft assembly, you can definitely tell that in this car. Yeah, man. There's some other issues that are going to have to be worked out, but I mean, you know, just some of the stuff that I replaced. End links, front main seal, rear main seal, intake gasket, O2 housing gaskets. I used the 3-inch ones, which are a different part number because it has a 3-inch on it. Exhaust manifold gasket, valve cover gasket. An AGP fork was installed because the fork was damaged. I replaced the aftermarket, I think they were the DCR, like, fuel rail ones. It's like a stud with an aluminum thing, but I pulled them out, retapped them threads and cleaned them up and put stock bolts holding the fuel rail in, so it's nice and tight now. I installed an OEM wastegate, the washer, pump, the reservoir, the pump and the hose, got all that stuff working. I bolted all that stuff in, got all the bolts, cold side pipe, like I said, with the bolts. The horn with the bolts, I actually had to replace the pigtail on the end because it was cut off. Used engine harness parts, which we used to fix the engine harness because I had some used harnesses. Side marker pigtails, replaced both of them on each side. So that stuff was all soldered and then heat shrinked and taped up. I dug through my vacuum lines, and from what was on the car and what I had, I was actually able to put together a nice set of stock style lines with the correct colors going to the correct locations. That's a tough one too because they're no longer available. And there was a bunch of assorted bolts that I actually dug out and I used. Like I said, I cleaned up stuff, tapped some holes, you know, just took care of that stuff. This side down here on the bottom, we actually pushed out on the lower core support and I straightened that down there. I don't know, man, it's just, it even still looks like this one side's sitting down a little bit, but that could be in the suspension. Like I said, those coilovers are just, they're shot. They are the cheap ones, and they are at their life expectancy length, and they are just done. So that's just going to be something that I'm gonna suggest to the current owner of the car. All I can really honestly say is this thing's come a long way since I got my hands on it. It still needs more, and you know, that's going to be up to the person who has the car. It's funny, it was sitting here, I had a bunch of people ask me, am I putting this thing together to sell? And it's like, well, no, I'm helping somebody out. So hopefully everything goes right. This thing's going for a test drive. It has been brought up to temp twice now. It seems to be starting up okay. So, you know, it has the new clutch. The motor's pretty much, you know, the bottom end's fresh, you know, as far as the bearings and everything, because that stuff was all replaced. So, and the turbo's new. There's no cracks or leaks in that aftermarket manifold. It seems to sit here and run pretty good. And like I said, I revved it up and it was okay. So, yeah. You know how that goes. I get to the end of the videos and it's a bunch of ums. So I'm just gonna, you know, if anything else gets done to this car, I'll make a different video on it and we'll go from there. But pretty much we're waiting on a couple parts, side marker lights, the wheel wells, and then, you know, to see if we're going to do anything else to it at this point. Like I said, it needs more. It does. It needs more. I mean, this thing was in some bad shape. But you guys watch those videos so you know. And that's it, guys. I'm out, man. I'm on to the next project. I'm done. All right, so we had a very successful test drive. We've got about, I don't know, 10 miles on it, 7-10 miles. No issues, just kind of getting used to it, getting the car running because it's been sitting for so long and driving. The struts are going to need to be something that's got to be addressed pretty quick, but everything worked out great.